Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the show. Glad to have you guys here this Sunday, the 22nd, December 2024. Thank you for tuning in. Now, listen, I know you guys have all heard about this stuff that's going on. Let me just show you these drones. Well, that's what they're calling them now, I guess. Now, this is a picture taken off of an aircraft wing. I guess a guy was flying into New Jersey. He spotted dozens of these things as he was flying into the city, flying up above the clouds. And they're orbs of light. Balls, round spherical balls of light that can suddenly appear and then disappear suddenly. So that's what he was recording, and people have seen. I'm going to tell you guys, talking about this, the whatever you want to call it, drones, call them drones. There's been a lot of sightings. You guys have been all over the news, and they've been trying to find out what they are. So I watched this video, and there was this guy, and he was making a plea. Well, not really a plea, but like he was trying to put out his idea that was of what they were, and it sounded quite logical. So I watched and listened to what he had to say, and he was saying that these are radiation sniffing or radiation detecting drones that were flying over New Jersey trying to detect or looking for something, looking for radiation as they were flying over the city. And I said, hey, that sounds like it kind of makes sense. So I got right on it. This was a few days ago. And I said, okay, I got to research this and see if that's what this is. So I got right on it, and I started to use my logic and common sense like I generally do. And I got thinking about it, if you're going to detect something, you guys ever used like a metal detector before? Have you? You guys ever used one? Well, there's a little round ring thing on the end of the metal detector. And that's what detects metal. And you got to run it over the ground very slowly, just maybe an inch or two above the ground. And that detector ring will detect the metal. Well, radiation detection works something similar to that. So I got thinking about that for a minute, and I said, well, gee, could that be it? Maybe he solved it. Maybe he's got it. Maybe this is it. Maybe they're looking for radiation. So I got checking around and studying up on these radar detecting drones, and they are a thing. There are such a thing as a radar detecting drone, and they're quite large. They're bigger than your regular drone that like you buy on Amazon or whatever, a typical drone that people would buy for like 1,000 or 2,000. These are bigger. These are quite a bit bigger. But they're still within the size range where a man could go over and pick it up, carry it. Radiation detecting drones. But I got checking up on them and looking at the manufacturers and checking the specs, how they function and stuff, looking into it. And what I found out is you have to get a radiation detecting drone within 10 meters of the source of the radiation to detect the radiation. If you're further away than that, the detector on it won't work. You say, well, what does that mean? That means that forget it. It ain't it. It sounded good in theory and everything. Radiation detection and that sounded good in theory, but when I checked in on it, I said, hey, that's not it, because they're up there flying 2,000 feet or whatever. These drones, they're up there, way up in the sky. They're not going to be able to detect any radiation from up there. That would be an absolutely useless mission, and so that idea is like in the scrap bin as far as I'm concerned. That's just me, but I'm throwing that idea in the scrap bin because they can't get close enough. So, what are they doing? Well, one of the things I noticed, I was watching some of the video footage of these drones and stuff flying by, and the things were lit up like a Christmas tree. The few videos I watched, they had unnecessary. I consider, they have to put safety lights on aircraft and stuff for the the FAA or whatever, like blinkers and stuff like that. They have to put them on there so other airplanes won't collide with them. But no, these pictures I saw, they went above and beyond. It was like they wanted to be seen. They had lights all over them. They're lit up like a Christmas tree, the drones I saw. So I just don't know what the answer is. So that makes these unknowns. And they don't know. Nobody knows. Nobody out there knows, and it's only natural that they try to find rational explanations. And that's what this uh, radiation detecting theory was all about. Them trying to find rational explanations for what's going on, because this whole thing has not seemed like it's been very rational up till now. I mean, the whole thing is like weird. It's bizarre beyond belief. And there's no explanation that's fit so far, except maybe people who say, oh, they're the aliens or whatever, but that's not really getting to the nitty gritty of what are they? Exactly what are they? You still don't know what they are. And nobody knows it. And so this makes this a mystery, an unbelievable mystery. Now, we got to get on to other stuff because there are other stuff happening out there. It's going to be, I can just see it coming now. You guys can't see it. But, along with all the wars that are cropping up around the world, the tariffs are coming soon. Tariffs going to be flying out this way and every which way as soon as this next year, And if war gets going, how do countries, I'm not real familiar with this, but how do countries, when they really go to war and stuff, they don't trade with one another at all, from what I understand. Do they? I mean, doesn't trade just come to a stop? I mean, how does that work, world trade, when the world is at war? I just don't understand it, and I don't know how. And I guess maybe we might find out, But Trump is threatening tariffs if the EU doesn't buy more oil and gas from the United States. I can just see the tariffs are just going to be coming. They're going to be levying tariffs left and right. It says Donald Trump has threatened to levy tariffs against the European Union if the bloc does not buy more oil and gas from the United States. Now, there's been a threat for tariffs here in Canada. And I heard 25%. America's the biggest trading partner with Canada. That would just destroy our economy. Ultimately, it'd be like Trump dropping the gavel down and bang, and that's the end of Canada. Just wiped out. 25% tariffs would just be wiped out. Okay. Just like somebody's on an iceberg and they're cutting the iceberg and they're drifting out to sea, then the iceberg just wave bye-bye. Bye-bye, Canada. Anyway. And it says the bills don't stop just because it's Christmas. And honest to God, I mean, here in all of North America, here in the United Kingdom and every place, a large chunk of the population is really suffering right now. Now it's coming in stages. The first wave of this whole thing is hitting the first groups of people, and these are the people who are like gig workers and people who don't have steady jobs and people who are on the lower income side. It's been hitting them first. That's the first wave. The second wave is going to be coming, and it's going to be starting to hit hard next year, 2025. It's going to be starting to hit hard with the next group of people up, the people who've had steady jobs and stuff, and all of a sudden they might get a pink slip or whatever, and not only that, food prices are going to continue to rise, price on everything's going to continue to rise, put squeeze on that second group. The second group's going to start to feel it soon, and this year coming, and it's going to start soon, and it's going to it's putting more pressure on society in general, and this process is going to continue. You're going to see more homeless, more pain, because as the rich get richer, that money's going someplace. It's a wealth transfer away from the middle class and into the pockets of the rich. This hasn't stopped. This process is going to continue. It's going to get stronger. And as it gets stronger, more people are going to fall by the wayside. And this is part of the squeezing I was telling you guys about that can only go in one direction. It's not going to back off. It's going to keep squeezing tighter and tighter until the people react to it at a certain point. How far are we away from that reaction? I've likened it to a human stampede. It's going to be a sudden thing where a triggering mechanism, the trigger of that reaction, it could come from some other alternative source. In other words, the people are upset. They're finding it hard to feed themselves and feed their families and even to keep a roof over their head. That builds and builds and builds, and the people don't say nothing, and then some other thing comes along that might not even be related that triggers them. An event. And then boom. Next thing you know, it could go beyond mass protests and stuff. It could go to something on another level. And it could happen suddenly, but the conditions have to be right. It's kind of like the way you get a storm in a summer afternoon or whatever. You got to have the right amount of heat from the sun. You got to have the right weather conditions, maybe a cold front coming in and meeting the air. Everything's got to be just right, and then you get tornadoes. Tornado forms. And it's the same thing with this. If conditions are just right and ripe for it, well, you can get a similar thing that happened, say, in France during the French Revolution. The conditions were just right for that to happen. And then, boom, it happened. It doesn't come out of a vacuum. This universe works on cause and effect. You've all seen those little balls. They got like 5 little balls in a row hanging on strings. And you drop one ball down that hits the ball on the end, and it goes through all the other balls, and the other ball on the other side comes out and pops off and goes, Anyway, I get talking about that. Now, over in Ukraine, they've been firing missiles into Russia. Not all the missiles are U.S.-made missiles. This was a Ukrainian drone that hit a city 1,000 kilometers in from the border. And it hit a skyrise, and it's almost like watching a scene from 9/11. Here's a picture of the building right here where the airplane, no, it wasn't an airplane, but a drone slammed into the building, but did damage kind of like the damage that was done to the World Trade Center, on 9/11. Similar kind of an idea where like a small airplane or a drone flew right into the side of the building 1,000 miles from the border. There's a picture of the building. This big skyscraper. You can see and really, they'll probably have to tear that down now, I imagine. But let's put it this way. I think what's holding Russia back from taking bigger action against Ukraine is the fact that Russia is taking territory right now. They're busy. They're busy gaining ground really fast, and they don't want anything to. Ukraine is wildly throwing punches this way or that way. It's like, but it's like kind of like a guy that's being held down on the ground, and he's throwing punches and kicks, but the other guy's got him by the throat and is squeezing and knows that he's going to win in the end. But no matter how hard the guy kicks and screams and punches and whatever. So that's what Ukraine's doing right now, is they're throwing kicks and punches and whatever they can do. But Russia's pushing for the heart. They're going right. They've got that spearhead of their main forces, and they're moving forward day by day by day, and they're putting their attention into that, and nothing's going to get in their way. That's where we are with this happening right now. And of course, they're trying to gain as much ground as they can before Donald Trump actually gets in office, because there's going to be some sort of a peace arrangement coming along then at that point in time. And both sides are trying to gain leverage right now for that conclusion. But, if that comes and goes and they don't get peace, things are not looking good at that point, because then we're back to square one again, where NATO cannot afford to lose Ukraine and Russia can't afford to lose either. And then both sides are like... Anyway, I put this map up here to show you guys so you can see visibly how much debt there is out there. And we're being smothered. The world right now is being smothered in debt. Absolutely smothered in debt. With the United States having the biggest share, 34.5% of all the debt in the world. You can probably spot your country in there. There's the UK right there. Right down there. There's France. There's China behind my head there, 16.2%. Japan at 10%. The big three, carrying the most debt, are Japan, China, and the United States. Imagine such a small country at 10% of the world's debt, Japan. Now that's incredible. Now, I can understand China at 16%, but is Japan at 10%? Goodness me, that's a lot of debt considering the size of Japan in comparison to the rest of the world. Now, I can understand the United States having 34.5%. Canada, there we are, 2.3% of the world's debt. That's a lot of debt for... Canada's got a large land mass. It's not that many people living up in Canada, really, considering the size of the land mass. I think there's like 30 million people. And we got as much land as the United States has. The United States has got more than 10 times as many people. Probably closer to 15 times as many people on the same amount of land. So that means that if you've got, say, one person on each square kilometer up here in Canada, you probably got 100 people on each square kilometer. I'm just saying, a lot more people. Now, so what do we got going on in the markets? How did they end this week? Well, we had a bit of a sell-off there. The Dow ended, let me see, am I on the right page? Canada, the S&P 500 is at 5,930. It's up 63 points, I guess, on the week. The Dow Jones is at 42,840, and it's up 498. 498. It was a dip. Yeah. Well, that's because mainly why we got this dip in the markets is the Fed outlook. They were going to do 4 rate cuts, and now they're decided to only do 2 rate cuts for 2025. And there was a sell-off because there were only 2 rate cuts they're planning on. And the markets were expecting 4 rate cuts. So they had their little their little market tantrum. We didn't see it go down anyway substantially. Crude oil ended the week at $69.58. So the markets rebounded up 498 points, and then basically were a little bit lower than they were last week. Not much. So things are going along in the financial system there because it's all rigged. Taking a look at our silver at $29.49. And I watched a show this morning about silver. And a guy, he went to an abandoned silver mine, but it was very high-grade ore. There's a lot of silver in the ore because it was a mine where they mined lead and silver. And there was a lot of lead in the silver per tonnage. High grade for silver. So he went down into the mine, went down underneath the mine. He scooped up some ore into a bucket by hand with a pickaxe. And he didn't count his time. He just counted didn't count his work or anything doing all that. Didn't count the price of the ore or anything like that. He just scooped some into a bucket, took it up, and he refined it. But he did calculate how much the refining costs, mostly for the fuel to refine that silver. He refined just 1 ounce of silver from the abandoned mine. His fuel, and he only calculated his fuel costs. And for fire in the kiln and stuff like that, and for heating it up and for processing the ore. So he processed 1 ounce of silver, and the final cost was $22.50 US. All for fuel. He didn't count his labor costs. Now, of course, in mass production, fuel costs might be a bit lower, because he was using propane mostly, and they mostly, I think they use a lot of diesel fuel and stuff, but heat is heat. I think propane's a bit more expensive, but still, $22.50 an ounce was just his fuel cost, not counting labor, not counting, just to refine an ounce of silver. And so I expect that it's probably over $20 now. The miners, by the time they count their all-in costs to get an ounce of silver, it's probably over $20. So they don't have a really big profit margin. I think he figured his profit margin in at $7.50 after he refined it, but that's not counting his labor costs, and it took him 4 hours of work to refine it. He didn't count that. So, I mean, what's that? He's making like $1 an hour or whatever for his labor costs. So it's hardly worth it. And that's where we are with these guys that are mining silver in a big way. Still, it's a lot of cost. Mostly it's the cost for fuel. And a lot of that's diesel fuel, because they've got to take about 400 pounds of ore and they got to crush it to a powder. And then they have to put chemicals in stuff to separate the silver from the ore. They have to put it in these big mixing things and stuff. And then they have to do all that smelting and stuff. By the time they got it to the ore price, they're not getting a whole lot of profit. It makes this stuff a terrific bargain right now, because it's limited in the earth. Silver doesn't grow on trees. There's little, just like silver and gold both, there's little tiny flecks almost everywhere. There's people that actually go out to Home Depot and they buy bags of sand. And they run it through a sluice and they get gold out of it. The guy went into Home Depot and he bought like $2,000 worth of sand. And I watched him on YouTube, and he took it home. There's a whole truckload of sand. And he filtered it and sluiced it all down. And he got a couple $100 worth of gold out of it. Of course, it wasn't worth his labor because, it cost him more than the gold was worth. But the fact is that there's gold everywhere. It's probably gold in your driveway. There's gold everywhere, but it's in small quantities. Little flecks of gold powder. A little fleck here, a little fleck there. It's hardly worth getting. Now, when you go to a place where there's higher concentrations of it, that's the places where they've got the mines and stuff. But the thing is once you mine it out, the higher concentrations, it's gone. It ain't never coming back. So if you go to a place and they got high concentrations, like I heard about Sutter's Creek, where they first went to get the gold, out in California, and there's a stream running there, and they were able to walk in the stream. They were able to pick lumps of gold, lumps the size of your thumb, off of the bottom they're just sitting there on the bottom of the rocks, on the bottom of the stream. Well, they went through there and they picked all those out. They're not there anymore, obviously, because everybody would be rushing to the gold. It's a gold rush, is what it was. Everybody'd be rushing to get gold. If it was still there, they all picked them up and sold them, and they're now into the amount of gold we have. Like there's gold bars stored away in the world here, there, and everywhere. Where do you think they come from? That's when people mine that gold out with their hard sweat or their brow and everything, and it ends up always going back and back, and they end up putting more and more away in these vaults. What's in the vaults right now? Well, they've got gold from all for the last 7,000 years. They've been just basically, and so you might have a necklace and you might have earrings or whatever. They'll end up in those bricks in the vault in the end. That's where it always ends up. If it doesn't get lost or something, some of the stuff, jewelry and stuff, gets lost or whatever. Some of it, but oftentimes it'll make its way back to those vaults. You say, well, how? Well, people, maybe a person will die. Aunt Martha will die. She'll leave her earrings to so-and-so. They get hard up for money. They take them to the pawn store. The pawn store then sells them back to the smelter. And the smelter takes them and takes all that stuff, all that scrap jewelry, melts it back into a brick of gold again, and ends up back in the vault where the rich people have it. That's what happens. Cryptocurrency today, 96,000. So it was 103. It topped out around 103. Bitcoin, now it's 96,000. So it's shed a few $1,000s. What, about $7,000 it shed? But it's still high, 96,000. Now, taking a look at our, we looked at our bonds and rates. Yeah, a 30-year rate now is at 4.72. It's down 1.9 basis points. And the U.S. 10 years at 4.53. It's down 4 basis points. Taking a look at our dollar this week is at 107.82. So, my thought on the drones, as everybody else is putting their 2 cents in, all along, because of the peculiar way the whole thing has went down. With these initially drones flying around, it looked like lit up Christmas trees, and then people seeing these drones change from these flying orbs of light, and it change itself into a drone, or a drone will fly. I saw one video of a drone flying up to one of these orbs of light, and the two touched in air, and then the drone fell down dead to the ground. It was, the orb of light did it in, or whatever. And so, don't know what they are. I tend to think if you look up in the sky and you see something you can't identify, isn't that an unidentified object? And so nobody's identified them, and then thousands of people are working on it right now. So it makes some unidentified objects. Unidentified aerial phenomenon? I don't know. UAP? Isn't that the definition of a UAP? Is an unidentified? Nobody's identified them yet. Let's wait and see what turns out from all of it. Because right now I'm just going to write the whole thing off as another UFO flap. That's what they call a flap, when people see a whole bunch of sightings all in one go. And this has happened before. There's been flaps about every 10 years. There's a flap someplace or another, you know. Remember when I first got studying UFOs, there was a big flap going on in Mexico City, down in Mexico. Not New Jersey, but in Mexico City. And it looked almost identical to this one. And there's just as many sightings. They can start and they can stop for no apparent reason. So listen, guys, you guys have a great weekend. Have a great Christmas. Merry Christmas, guys. Have a happy Christmas and have a happy New Year. You guys have a great day. Bye-bye.